Okay, so I'll introduce you, let you run with it.
Yep.
And I'll go shut the doors.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the last presentation in this session for AusCERT2022, day 2 in the morning. My name is Valdemar Jacobson. I'm your chair for this session. For this session, we've got Perre on the hallmarks of a high-performing SOC, specifically talking about a blue and purple teaming perspective. Please welcome Mickey.
All right, that's on, I think, yep. We'll cue the slides, and in between I'll do an impromptu dance. People that know me, I am not serious, so I can't be serious. I find it hard being serious, so this is going to be a bit of a jovial take on a low-performing SOC. And so, yeah, my name is Mickey. I'm the APAC Cyber Security Strategist working at Devo. I've been fortunate to work across many different SIMs across my time in the vendor community, and had the fortunate time to speak to both high-performing SOC and low-performing SOCs alike. And so my hope out of this presentation is that I will share some of the feedbacks and some of the things that I've seen work in a SOC, and also what hasn't worked in these SOCs. Now, to be fair, let's be serious here. It's Friday, the end of AusCERT, and I am in between you and food, lunch, and beers, because I saw there's beers being served out there. So I take that very seriously. So I'm going to try and keep it shorter than the 45 minutes, because I'm not sure who will fall asleep first, me listening to myself talk for 45 minutes or the people here. So I'll try and keep it engaging. It's a bit of a agenda, apparently, because I didn't use spell check. Setting the scene, do the evolution of the SOC, solving the problem, wrapping key takeaways, and if we get to the end and there's a bit of time, you're like, hey, what is Devo? Not a band, it's a sim. I might talk about that, but we'll leave that at the end. So let's talk about the evolution of the SOC, where it started, where some people in this room might still be, and where you hope to be in the future. And at the start, long time ago, when the NOC, or the Network Operation Team, was responsible for security, there was the start of the SOC, which was AV, network, and IDS. So AV firewall and IDS. And then with the firewalls, it was great. You put it in, it blocked everything, and there was no problems. AV blocked it. There was denial lists that got updated daily, and we're good. And some IDS signatures, and we were good. CEO, CIO, they're like, we don't need anything else. We've got a firewall. And I still have that conversation today. There's some people still crawling. And then as we got a little bit more mature, we started to get deep packet inspection. Proxies started to come out, and we can get an understanding about what is going on in the web traffic. We had IPS. It's like, oh, if I can see this, why don't I block it? And so SOC started to be driven around, okay, well, I need to see the packets. I need to see inside the traffic. I want to block, start doing log source categorization. And then there was the evolution where we're sort of in the middle now, and this might offend some vendors, but we're in the SIM EDR space where centralizing all your data, and guess what? We're a Devo, we're a SIM, so we're in part of this space. It's like, if I have a SIM and EDR, I can centralize all my data, everyone's going to use it, EDR is going to block everything, and that's going to solve all of our problems. But this conference wouldn't be here if SIM and EDR solved all this problem in the evolution of the SOC. So at the moment, we're going through this next evolution, but it's hard when there's, a vendor community just completely sort of pummeling you with emails, and we're one of them. And we're like, oh, UBA SOAR, that's going to solve it. We should do that. We need more machine learning and more AI, and some automation. How the SOC's evolving with the high-performing ones, they're thinking about not just doing automation. Automation requires people to build workflows and playbooks, and there's a valuable use for that. More mature evolution, high-performing, you think about how do we do it in an autonomous way. So difference is automated. You go through a series of workflows, if then else, very effective. A Recorded Future, great partner of Devo, just talked about building playbooks. They are very effective at things like enriching information. But what happens when an analyst needs to do an investigation? Well, they need to do it, and they go through and they ask series of questions that are very common. For example, let's imagine you see a process spawn on the endpoint. Well, who spawned that process? What was that user? That was a question. What was the child and parent process? And keep going through that full chain of those. Did that user authenticate remotely? Where did they authenticate from? Autonomously, you can ask these questions and get to an end-to-end story of an attack story. And high-performing SOCs are looking for, I guess, a capability that lifts up all their level 1 analysts to level 2 and level 3. But how do we get to that point? At the moment, a lot of, I didn't use that well. There we go. A lot of people are sort of stuck in the middle here. And going back to what Jamie said in a previous talk was analyst burnout, not having enough time. It's like you can have all this technology and buy all the tools, but if you're not solving some of the fundamental problems of why the SOC's not performing well, you don't get the opportunity to move through these later phases. So with that, I'm going to talk about a story of Charlie and the underperforming SOC. A story, because I like stories. You ask my daughter, I'll read them many times over. So, Charlie has just been hired into an underperforming SOC, and working in that SOC is painful. But Charlie is eager to fix it. Day one comes in, it's like, I'm going to solve the world. I've got the necessary tools and necessary skill to do that. But before starting anything, you don't go in there and flip tables and swipe things off and say this is how we're going to be doing it. You first have to understand what the problem is and then how you might address it. And to do that, what Charlie thinks about doing is like, hey, I can ask questions internally, which is a really, really valid point, or I can go out and find out what my peers are having issues with, like you're doing today. And to do that, I'm going to find the most reputable brand possible to actually ask that question. It's like, well, who is the most reputable security brand that you can go out that has a name that's after a music band? And he picks Devo, of course. Devo has, and not the music band, the cybersecurity company. And the reason why he picks them is because every year Devo releases a SOC performance report that details what are the challenges that organizations face inside the Security Operations Center. Reason why he picks it is because over the last 3 years, we've engaged with, and this is one thing I guess I'm proud as a security engineer to talk about this, is that it's a unbiased presentation. It's done by the Ponemon Institute. Everyone knows the Ponemon Institute, and they independently verify over 1,000, they do 1,000 of your peers and colleagues in various industries, and ask what is painful in the SOC. Good thing is, it's not tool-centric. It's not, would a UBA or a SOAR improve your day-to-day? It's more about the grunt work about what are the challenges. Interesting part, and this is probably not interesting for most people in this room, is that leaders and staff have opposing views of for a lot of things about what they need to help them do perform better in the SOC. And there is a gap. There is a gap between high-performing and low-performing SOCs, and Charlie's hopefully going to fix some of them and address them as we go through this. So, day one of Charlie's underperforming SOC life. He's been told it's terrible and he needs to fix it. So, what's the first problem that he comes about? Turf wars. He comes in and you can feel the tension in the air with the IT team and the security operations team. They're not getting along. Does this sound familiar? Security team being blocked out, not being invited into conversations, probably told too late, hey, we've got this project, we've got this production application that's going to go into production tomorrow. Can you do a quick scan and prove it? That is the common issue. And there's these turf wars that always occur. And Charlie is one of those. And interesting fact that low-performing SOCs are 20% more likely to have turf wars over high-performing SOC. So it's a good thing to start thinking about how can I start bridging those relationships when it comes to the SOC and IT. But how do we fix it? So I'm going to put my hand up and say that, about 7 years ago when I had a real job, I used to work in public sector, government agency. I was the person that made it hard for everyone in this room by making security the people that you hate. That was me. Sorry, anyone who's taken my job. Things that really bother, that really cause a bit of tension between the SOC and the IT ops. The red tape, making someone go through 7,000 approvals to get something to deploy in the cloud. That happens quite often. Obviously, you want to have some red tape to prevent someone from just swiping their card and producing a shadow IT. Blocking, just straight up saying no and then moving on. Very common thing that can increase the tension. And something that actually probably is the worst is delaying. Delaying that decision for someone to actually bring on new technology that's going to help the business. And I'm not going to say here and say, security needs to be a feature, you need to be part and say, kumbaya. That's not really going to help you. But these are the telltale signs. If you're seeing this type of, behavior, it's something that could be causing that low-performing SOC. Because if you need to get new projects, get new infrastructure for a new technology, who do you think you have to go through? Most often, it's going to be IT operations. So reducing that tension is important. So we get to the end of day one, and because Charlie is super efficient, he's solved that problem. They're all friends with IT operations. Projects starting to get through. They're invited much earlier, and they're getting a little bit better. So he's day two of Charlie's better performing SOC life. So what's on the horizon for Charlie? Well, everyone's heard this, but lack of available analyst talent. He's got all this, starting to move and starting to get everything right, but there's no one to hire. And there's no one to actually help inside their operations center. And there's a reference probably a little bit too small for you to see on this. I thought it was bigger when I created this, but obviously not. AusCyber did a great publication about the severe shortage, and this is pretty common. There aren't any job-ready cybersecurity workers, and there's about 17,000 more jobs needed by 2026, which is a significant amount. Good things, there's conferences like this, and there's also a lot more cybersecurity courses that are coming online to help bridge that gap. But that doesn't fill the short to medium term in terms of improving your ability to hire people in the team. So what do you do? Well, good thing to know is that, say, 64% of high-performing SOCs have an analyst shortage or a skill shortage. So having that kind of shortage is actually a good indicator that you actually don't have available analyst talent. When you're needing to hire people and get people to fill jobs, that's a sign of growth. That's a sign of increased maturity. So if you are facing that problem, that's a good sign that you're actually moving towards a high-performing SOC. So what do we do when you think about lack of available analyst talent? It's to broaden our horizons. So what do I mean by that? Think about when you're looking for a person maybe inside your organization. You might say, developer. Charlie says, automation engineer. You might say, IT network admin or trouble person. Charlie says, security architect. And you say, database admin, dare I say it. Charlie says, SIM architect. So think about those roles that are translatable inside your organization, that there's people inside your organization who know your environment better than anyone. And me being a little bit self-loathing here, I started off my career as a help desk, and I believe every good security practitioner should start in help desk, go to network operations, network admin, and then go to security. But that's where I've seen the best outcomes, because they know the network, they know how to configure things like group policy, authentication, they know how to speak to people. Level 1 support, you're always being told you're at the coal face. That's relationships. That's a really good thing to hire people out of, because they're good at talking. Second part, sensible advertisements. And I'll repeat it. Sensible advertisements. So, these are 3 examples of where not sensible advertisements. So, Sebastian Ramirez, creator of Fast API, he was looking at a job where it asked for 5+ years of fast API experience, and he had only created that 1.5 years ago. So it was like, well, can't solve it. Waiter needed, not in cybersecurity, 20 years of experience, must be 18 years or over. And finally, my favorite, 5+ years of Java, CLI, all these things, and it's an entry-level position. Don't do that. It's a bad idea. And it doesn't normally happen from the security team. This is something important to remember. This normally happens when HR or payroll, whoever does your recruitment, copies and pastes a previous job ad or does their own research and pastes out. So vet it. It takes you probably 10 minutes to vet that. Because sometimes I've seen these situations where they'll copy, if you're a pretty big organization, maybe you're in Sydney or you're in Melbourne and the job's in Canberra, where I live, because that's important. They'll put the ad and they say you must be able to travel to the Sydney office. Just simple little things like that can put people off. Second to that, if you look at these requirements, required. My pet hate in terms of work, in terms of hiring people. Get rid of the word requirement. Well, do what you want, but yeah, maybe advice. Say desired skills. Make it clear. In terms of trying to be equal and provide equality of opportunity, there's no person on this world that will actually be able to do all of that, and that can put people off. Make a statement at the top. Hey, these are desired skills, and you'll be evaluated on an individual basis. If you don't meet all of these desired skills, still apply. Go through the process. Encourage people to apply, because there's so many times where someone thought they weren't capable of a job, but that encouraging words helps them to say, yep, maybe this job could be for me. So a really good bit of advice. So don't put in required, say desired. So yay, day 3 of Charlie's good performing SOC life. So he's going pretty well. He's solved the analyst shortage problem. He's fixed the IT turf problem. And now it's day 3. He's like getting a bit cocky. He's like, all right, I can do this. I can fix what's next. So Charlie logs into their desktop. And he's like, this is a little bit funny. I haven't seen this for a while. So he opens up his chat messenger and his instant messaging solution and says, hey, Karen, why do we have Windows XP? And she goes, because it's always been that way. And he says, okay, lol, good, G to G, nudge. There's probably 2 people that will know that reference that have seen this. That shows my age. And so he goes, well, why are we using this old technology? A lot of people, and I guess in fact, question how likely do you think high-performing SOCs are very likely to improve their SOC by changing technologies? Not an answer here. 54%, so over half of the high-performing SOCs are very likely to change the technologies they have to improve a problem or a process problem. But saying 54%, do we really need a technology? Who knows? And that's why we have to ask ourselves, well, why add new tech? Just in general, why would you do it? Well, think about it. Improvement of visibility or capability. So think about, EDR, really good technology to have, but as you move to more container-based workloads, EDR doesn't work. You can't install an EDR on a container. Maybe you want more data in your SIEM, for example, or you don't have access to your cloud data. So improving your visibility. It doesn't always have to be related to SIEM, even though SIEM vendors like me will say that you need to do it. You might have a visibility gap in some area that you want to improve. Consolidation, really important part in terms of cost savings. Think about, and I'll get everyone to do a mental maths, how many cloud providers they have and how many each of those cloud providers they have, like accounts. You've got 15 AWS accounts because everyone, can spend less than $1,000 on their credit card and not get it through. That happens, yeah. Reduction in staff requirements. This is not reducing staff, let's make that clear. What I'm saying in terms of reduction in staff requirements is, if you think about SaaS-based technology, we'll talk about this later, people are more effective at higher value tasks in the SOC, doing threat hunts, doing investigations, doing incident response. That's where the value is, not keeping something tuned and operational. That's just my opinion. I'll let everyone else decide that. But I think if you go to your CISO or CIO and say, hey, I kept the server up today, And you're like, no, it's not really acceptable. Like, hey, here's this threat I'd identified and we remediated within the day. I think that would be a little more compelling than keeping systems up and operational. And back before about the playbooks with, I'll refer to Jamie's, because why not, someone smarter than me, needing to improve your workflow. So if you're doing this same repetitive process day in, day out, like a most common one in the SIM vendor space is the SOC having to do a monthly report, and they're pulling together different bits of information, and that workflow sucks up time. It's like, I know myself, I was like, I don't like writing reports. I'd rather spend 2 hours doing a threat hunt, learning about something new, watching a video, going on a course. That workflow, what are you doing? What are you suffering for? Because you're actually taking out that time during the day. So could that workflow improvement help you? And obviously the most important reason anyone buys any other technology, and that's because Gartner said we need to do it. And that's generally what happens in certain industries. So, show of hands. Who has a business analyst in the SOC today? One? See, one person. So, hire one of these, I'll put it that way. So in about a month ago, we had a round table at a place called Adapt, another security conference, and we had our peers in the room talking about what are the problems they face. And I asked the question, I said, how many people in this room have a business analyst inside their SOC to understand if there is a true problem or if their vendor is inventing a problem? And most of them, all the high-performing SOCs, had a business analyst that understood the workflow, understood how they go through that process. So I know before people want to, as SOC analysts, you want to hire the tech people because they're like, that's the exciting part of the job. But the business analyst is going to get rid of all of that annoying process stuff that stops you from maturing from that low-performing SOC to a high-performing SOC. So, if you don't have a business analyst, I recommend having one, contracting them, because they will look at how you do stuff in a SOC. They might not have the exact skills, but they look at process, procedures, how you do things, workflows, and they can identify, hey, well, actually, for alert tuning, how much time do you spend alert tuning? Well, you spend 15 hours a week doing alert tuning. How do we improve that process? Imagine if you could fix that without changing the technology, just by improving the process or having a defined process. That is something that's valuable in the SOC. And I don't hear enough organizations or SOCs talking about hiring a business analyst in the SOC. So good indicator. So great. Now we've hired the business analyst. We're all going well. Identified some workflow improvements. Identified we need new technology. Fixed the staff shortage. And there was something else, but can't remember. So we're on the great. Now Charlie's got a great performing SOC, but we want to improve it even more. So Charlie works into the server room and he sees his SIM and wonders if he can improve. His SIM's looking a little bit old and clunky. It's like, well, that old system, what happens if we don't run it on-prem and we do something that's cloud native versus cloud hosted? Could that help the SOC and improve their SOC performance? And to help you understand the difference about choosing the right technology, cloud choices, you can make any number of cloud choices. But going back to the pain points, staff analysts, shortage in people available to work, so there's not enough time in the day. There's also those turf wars. Trying to pick the right cloud and also the right cloud technology is important. So think about the 4 stages of SIM architecture. Choices for SIM. So where does it start? Well, it starts in on-premise. Very familiar image. Crawling, a lot of that manual working, keeping that system operational, and it serves a very valuable purposes for certain organizations who can't get out to the internet. I know some of them, there's a reason for that. Definite value. But as you get more mature, you go, hey, well, we've got this private cloud. How about we just host it and we don't manage the servers and we can just scale it up and down? But that costs a lot of money in the IaaS space, as people realize. Hosting that infrastructure, you're just moving this big technology in the SOC all the way up to IaaS, and you're still doing the same thing. So what's next in terms of improvement? Well, you've got IaaS, then we've got PaaS. And this is where I guess a lot of the SIM players play in, PAS. And so what do I mean by that? So PAS is where you are still in control as a SIM. Your job is to tune search performance, install and configure configurations, add-ons, deployments, testing, upgrading. That's what we call the PAS version of SIM architecture. And then in the middle, there's sort of an MSSP. That's the current phase at the moment, because they realize PAS, IaaS, and on-prem is not working for them. So like, well, maybe if we get an MSSP, and I'm going to annoy some people here in the room, if we get an MSSP, it'll solve all our problems. But then they own your data, maybe, because they're hosting the SIM, and it's like, well, shouldn't you own your own data? That's your data, your SIM, you choose your own technology. As we progress into more SaaS-based technologies, where you are a user, not an admin. So repeat that again. The difference between a PaaS and a SaaS is that you are the user and not the administrator. And that's the important part. So you want to be spending more time on those high value tasks and less time on those management and maintenance. So we choose SaaS for high performers. So what you want to do less of when you're choosing a SaaS-based technology for the SOC, improving your performance. This is not about features and functions. You hear, I'm not talking about detecting APTs and all these crazy, PowerShell attacks or whatever it is at the moment, because that's not the stuff that sucks in the SOC. It's the process stuff that you have to do that stops you from being a high-performing SOC. So you want to do less of building parsers. You want to be doing less of managing search performance, less of add-ons, installations, upgrades, platform upgrades and testing, waiting for a search to complete. Who's waited over an hour for a search to complete? Yeah, that's not useful. That should be someone else's problem. And you want more of building dashboards. Dashboards, reports, whatever you want to call them, use cases. That is where your data turns into value. Hunting. If I could spend most of my time hunting, that's what I would do. Enjoy that, doing through POCs. You do that kind of activity more. And that's what people see the value. That's where you see the value part, and also performing investigations. So think about that if you're stuck in the process, and a BA, business analyst, won't believe me, will say, well, actually, Mickey spoke, actually, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. He didn't speak truthfully. These aren't our issues. These other parts are our issues. Maybe our investigations are slow for these reasons. BA will help that. So now Charlie's happy. He has a high-performing SOC, and he is the high-performing SOC lead. He's just solved all the problems in 4 days. Pretty easy. Should be easy for everyone in here. 4 days, solve it all, and you're okay. So what did Charlie realize? Well, he realized turf wars in IT is not conducive in the SOC. And if you have non-people problems in the SOC, we'll put it that way, alternative solutions are beneficial to improving the SOC operation. Hiring a BA will help you identify the pain points in a good strategy or your workflow. And finally, everyone has talent hiring issues. If you have talent hiring issues, it's a good sign that you're growing and you're maturing. So it's not a bad thing, even though you're living through the pain. You're actually progressing. If you're not having talent hiring issues, you're doing nothing. And so what's that? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing twice and expecting different results. Is that correct? Maybe. So that is near the end. I told you I was going to keep it efficient. So if you'd like to catch us next at Devo, we have a showcase coming up in a couple of weeks. If you want to hear more about Devo, I'm not here to sell you the dream, but it's a Devo 101. There's a QR code if you want some malware. We are in the hall if you want a demo. And we have some cool swag if you'd like that. But questions?
We have 2 questions. Should SOCs be involved in continual improvement of security posture? This question is experience of SOCs. They're just reactive to events, incidents, rather than doing that continual improvement.
So should they be in part of continual improvement? I think the answer is yes. Any good SOC is data-driven, and they have understanding, I almost to say, even though the network admins wouldn't agree on this, but they have better understanding of the network and the connectivity and how organizations operate than probably anyone in the organization. you've got a data-driven method of being able to give that advice back. Was that the crux of the question?
That's sort of what they're trying to talk about. I'd probably go further and say, do you see the SOC, apart from just being the response centre, as also being the IT and network engineering, security engineering function that then supports each of those teams with those particular capabilities and aspects?
So I'm drawing a parallel to a talk I heard yesterday about the Cyber Fusion Centre with Dave Pham, and I think that type of vision, having it all integrated, is a solid strategy because you're all involved inside that team and you're sort of working together. If I understand, I might have missed the mark.
No, I think that's good. So I'm going to take that to the next step. How do you then have that function effectively and appropriately to still give you independent governance and oversight, separate from the people who actually operate and manage the tools to those that need to actually do that auditing and governance activities?
Yeah, good question. And off the head, I think it's a bad fluffy response, I'll put it this way, is by establishing a good strategy up front with your CISO and with your security team about what are the core roles and responsibilities and functions, ensuring there is autonomy in each of those roles to make their own decisions, but also that they're collaborating together. And
other question is, at what scale and size does hiring a business analyst make sense? And would having a partial BA be viable, and at what minimum proportion? So 20%, 40%, 80%?
Good question. So I think with BA, when you're a small team, maybe there's like two engineers, you have two security people. Maybe not. You probably got a lot more issues because you got staffing issues then. But the BA might help give you the business case to do it. So it might just be a short-term contract that you bring them in to work it out. Because sometimes in security, I have this challenge of articulating why you need the help. And a BA, even on a short-term contract, could give people, and they can translate what you're doing and the frustrations you have into something that's a bit more, I guess, business-centric and detailing that. So I hate giving percentages because, percentages of what, but, I think if you've starting to get more defined functions in your security operations center, when you have defined functions, you've got like the SOC team, you've got incident response team, then it's almost a must, I'll put it that way, once you've got very defined. But as you get smaller, probably part-time would be recommended.
So it's still fully integrated, but not necessarily there all of the day, every day, but probably more even just partial of every day, so they're getting visibility?
Correct, yeah. You have to be understanding, because throughout the middle of the day, what are you doing? Like, you're just going about your business, and that's where all those things that get thrown at you really can burn out the analyst.
So in an MSSP sense, so thinking of either a fully outsourced or a hybrid SOC style function, how do you get more control over the efficiency of the SOC, where your team and the MSSP are looking at the same cloud-based SIEM, so managing playbooks, managing roles and responsibilities, handover points, level 1, level 2, what the IR interactions are? Yeah,
look, my opinion is that no MSSP, and I'll put it this way, no security team should fully outsource your actual security services. It's destined for failure because they don't know your environment as good as you. And I poked the bear with the MSSP comment before, so I'll put it that way. I think the hybrid model, where they assist you with some of the operational components, installing endpoints, going out, doing alert tuning, but when it gets to sort of level 2, level 3 response, you have that in-house because you know the business units, you know who to speak to, who not to speak to, how to speak to some people, because there's different politics inside organisations.
So if I'm going to translate what you just said, you don't necessarily have to have the deep technical analyst capability in-house, but what you need is the incident commander, incident leader, local incident communicator, collaborator, coordinator role.
Yeah, correct.
To do that translation and business.
Yeah, and the thing I'll add to that is, owning your own tool set, very important, because that's, I've seen many times where people have gotten to sort of year 2 or year 3 of their MSSP cycle, and this is not to say there's a lot of really good ones, some of the, I guess, different ones, we'll put it that way. They'll get to year 2, year 3, and they own a tool set, and then all of a sudden you want to do a reevaluation, and pulling that out is very hard. So owning your tool set is a very good way of blending the MSSP with your own environment.
So to me, that sounds like you're advocating strongly against the let's just log ship mass logs to the MSSP and let them handle it.
Correct, 100%.
Which seems to be one of the many models out there.
Yeah, I would probably strongly advise against that, because you have no ownership of the whole end-to-end. And how can you sort of actually, I'll leave it for that.
As the SOC, you're always both accountable and responsible for the outcomes,
exactly.
even if you're devolving some of that responsibility to the third party to actually manage.
Correct, yeah.
Great. Well, on behalf of the conference, thank you very much for another challenging and interesting talk.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Enjoy lunch, everybody, and then we'll be back in split sessions after lunch for 2 more.